Hi and welcome. My name is Ilana King and I'm an entrance exam specialist, and I help other educators and tutors become entrance exam specialists too. I have a particular interest and track record in the 7+ exams. And in this video, I'm going to show you how you can use some fun techniques to help your students to learn the skills needed in verbal reasoning. Verbal reasoning is not on every 7+ entrance exam, but it's on many of them. All schools do non-verbal reasoning, and a large number of the sort of top tier schools, the most competitive schools, also do verbal reasoning. And one part of verbal reasoning skills that a student really needs to have is being able to understand the morphology of words. That means how they're actually put together, the letters within them, and how we can kind of work out how to move those letters around to create new words and to unscramble words. So you can do this through practice tests, of course, and there are loads of practice tests out there. But if a student is struggling with a type of question, doing it on paper doesn't always really help. Sometimes you can make it more practical, more visual for them to help them understand the type of question, what it is they have to do, and then they can apply that to paper tests. And one of the best ways is to use some letter tiles. I love physical objects. If you're working with a student in a room together, as many physical objects as you can use are going to make the session fun, interesting, engaging. Now, I'm going to show you a particular type of letter tile, but there are loads of different ones out there. My letter tiles are actually left over from my own children, who are now all grown up, but they were probably originally bought somewhere like the Early Learning Center, but these are very readily available online, and they're very inexpensive. You get a big tub full of all different letters of the alphabet, and they're nice and colorful, and that's what I quite like about them. These ones are actually magnetic ones, so if you wanted to use them on a magnetic A4 board, that would work well, but it doesn't really matter whether you do or don't. Now, if you're looking for something that you might have at home and you don't actually want to go out and buy any of these, you've got a few different options. If you've got a game of Scrabble at home, then you can use the letter tiles within that. You can also make your own. Of course, you can draw them or print them out, cut them out from card. I would laminate them if you're going to do that. The more colorful and visual, the better. But this is what I have, and this is what I'm going to use to show you. And as I said, I keep a tub of these readily available. So I'm going to just move those to the side. And I'm going to start with the simplest thing that you can do with these letter tiles. So one of the types of questions on the exam is to unscramble a word. So for instance, they might have written down a word that looks like this. And all the letters will be lined up, but they will of course be mixed up. Sometimes you'll be given a clue as to what the word might be when it's unscrambled, but sometimes not. So some children are really good at just looking at the letters, kind of moving them around in their head and seeing what words they can make from that. But for other children, it's a real struggle. And without being able to physically move the letters on the page, they find this really difficult. So this is where these little letters come in really handy. You can move them. So, you can look at it and say, oh, okay, there's two O's together. Ooh, they make the ooh sound. What word can we think of that might make the ooh sound? And it's nicely arranged at the moment with the F in front of it. So you might even say, well, let's try it with a foot. They might come up with foot. Okay, great. If they do that, or if you prompted them towards that, we can actually move those letters, put them together to make the word foot. Okay, well, what's left? We've got these letters here. What are we going to start it with? Well, the great thing about this is we can actually move them around and try. Apple, does that make a word? No. Label, no. But, as they start moving them around, we can see that we get the word ball. And then, of course, we have a compound word, football. So by physically moving them on here, it gives them the ability to try out lots of ideas without actually having to come to the conclusion that they're going to write on the paper until they found the answer. So I really like doing it for scrambled words. And then there's another type of question that children can find really difficult when they've never done it before. And in this type of question, they're given what you can see at the top here. So they're told, move one letter to change the first word into a new word, and that goes on the line there, and then change one more letter that helps it to become this end word, fan. And this is really confusing because if you haven't done this before, you're just struggling with the idea of how to do this, you can't physically pick up the letters. Yes, you can keep writing them down. And obviously one way of doing this, if you didn't have any letters and you were just doing it on a whiteboard, would be to get the pen and just try out on the whiteboard a different word. So what can we do here? Well, maybe I'm going to change the W to an F. Okay, you know, does that make a word? I'll try it out. No, of course it doesn't. I can rub it back out again. But it's more fun, it's more engaging, and it's easier to do it with these letters. So here we've got the letters for the first word, was. Okay, now we've also got the letters for the last word, because these are the only letters we're allowed to use. Okay, so we can get them out ready, and we don't need the rest of our alphabet. So we want to change this first word, was, to a new word, a word that exists. Okay, it's got to be a real word, but we're only allowed to change one of those letters using the letters here. But what we first want to point out to the child is that one of the letters remains the same. So between the word was and fan, the A is the same. It doesn't change. So we don't want to change that one then. We know that that one is going to stay in the middle of the word. So that just gives us the F or the N. Well, it's really easy now to just swap these and see. If I put the F where the W is, do I get a word? Faz? No, it doesn't mean anything. It's not a word. Okay, so it can't be that. What if I take the other letter, the N, and put it at the beginning? Naz, is that a word? No. So we know it's not that. Okay, well, we're leaving the middle one because that hasn't changed. So now we tackle the end one. Okay, let's start with the F, W-A, F, is that a word? No, and it's not going to help us reach our final word there because the F isn't in the right place anyway. Let's try it with the N, W-A-N, wan. Yes, that is a word. Okay, so now we know that our next word that goes in the middle here is one or wan. So we now need to say, does that work to get to our final word? If we were then going to change another letter, will we get fan? Yes, and of course the remaining letter F can be changed for the W, and we've reached our last word. Now we can do this without letters. If I take those letters away, the process the child would go through, if they're just looking at the paper, is to first of all identify that the middle letter doesn't change, so they can write that letter onto the line. They know that that is correct. Okay, then the question becomes, do they change the first letter to an F? Faz? No. Or do they change the last letter to an N? Okay, wan. Yes, and then they can see straight away that that works. So for us, that's really obvious. We don't need these physical letters to do it. But for a child of 5 or 6 years old, that's not obvious. And helping them go through it by actually moving letters around and physically seeing the words on the board will help them to reach that process where they can literally just look at it, swap it in their mind, work out if it's the right word, and move on. So it's kind of an intermediary or even a beginning step to help them do this. Can you use these letters for other things? Of course you can. You can use them for spelling words. It doesn't just have to be for verbal reasoning, right? You can use them for spelling and things as well. But I think they're particularly well suited to verbal reasoning. And as I'm always saying, we want to keep these sessions as dynamic, engaging, interactive as possible. With young children, we really need to keep that in mind all the time. So this is just another way of making something like verbal reasoning a little bit more fun, a little bit more engaging. I hope you took away some ideas that you're going to be able to use in your own sessions. Remember that if you ever want to do some more training on how to become a 7+ specialist or an entrance exam specialist, look for the link in the text of this in the bio, and you can look up the training that I offer. Thank you and goodbye.